Hello and welcome to this PowerDesigner demonstration. Today's topic is on round-tripping a database. One of the most common tasks for a modeling tool is to reverse engineer an existing database, then make some changes to the resulting model, and then generate those changes back to the database by way of a SQL script. Another common task is to update your model if the database changes. So we'll look at both scenarios in the following demonstration. So let's get started with the first step in the process, which is reverse engineering. So the first thing that we have to do in the reverse engineering process is to, name the model, and secondly, pick the DBMS target that we're going to reverse engineer from. As you can see here, there are a number of different database targets to choose from. At this point, we have two options to choose from. We can reverse engineer directly from a running database, or we can reverse engineer from a script file. For this demonstration, I think we'll choose the live running database. In PowerDesigner, there's a couple of different ways that you can connect to a database. You could connect through ODBC, JDBC, or a native driver. Native drivers are supported on Sybase, Microsoft, IBM, and Oracle platforms. So let's log into this database. Before PowerDesigner begins the reverse engineering process, it's asking you what you want to include in the reverse engineering. Now along the bottom are a series of tabs that allow you to choose the different artifact types. On each tab, there's a series of checkboxes, and the checkboxes you can use to select or deselect. So you can uncheck something if you want to exclude it from the reverse engineer. There may be instances where you have different selection sets based on maybe your role or a certain domain, and it can get a little tricky trying to keep track of everything that's been selected or deselected. So here's a good tip for you. You can name and save a selection set so that you can recall it later. Let's make some changes to this model so that it differs from the current database. Let's add a new column and modify an existing column. Okay, now that we've made our changes, let's generate a script to update the database. In this instance, we want to apply the changes we made to the database. So this dialog box talks about how you want to apply those changes. So there's three main areas to look at. The first is the type of generation, the second is how the differences are calculated, and the third is to determine how to actually modify the database. So the first part, you can generate either by a script file or a direct connection to the database and just push the changes in directly. Most of the time people want to generate a script. The second is the area where we can get the schema. So here's where you pick the method for determining what the differences are. So it can be either an archived model, a model in the repository, or a live running database, which is what we'll use. And then lastly, you can tell PowerDesigner to either use an alter statement or a drop and create method to actually change the database. Let's give the script a name and accept the defaults. Here's where my save selection set comes in handy. All I have to do is select it, and then I don't have to reselect the objects that I want to be compared. So now we've reverse engineered the database, and we have our model, so we're ready to actually do some comparing. The database synchronization window has three panes. A pane to represent the model, which is on the left, a pane to represent the database, which is on the right, and another pane along the bottom which displays the differences in detail. If we expand the nodes, we can see the differences between them. We created a new column called Email, and it shows up in blue on the left. On the right, it has a plus sign indicating that it will be added to the database. Address occurs in both, but there are differences, and at this point we don't really know what the differences are. But if we click the red circle, the bottom pane will show us the specific details about the change. Now I can see the differences between the two instances of address. I can use the checkboxes to choose exactly what I'd like to include or exclude from the script that will modify the database. Now the script has been generated, and this dialog box states that there is a file that you can go to and open it up and either look at it in your favorite text editor or open it up inside of your database administration tool. Now that was an example of a simple model-driven round trip where we made changes to the model and migrated those changes back to the database. Now we're going to shift gears a little bit and take a look at a different scenario. Not all database changes are made through PowerDesigner. In fact, there are lots of database administration tools that will also modify the schema of a database. Now we want to periodically check the database to see if the schema has been changed since the last time we reverse engineered this database. And that's what we're going to take a look at next. This time we're going to choose the menu option to update the model from the database. Here we're just going to follow the same procedure we did previously to connect to the database and to reverse engineer it so that we can see what the differences are between the two. Okay, so now we're at the comparison dialog box once again, but notice that it's not called Synchronization, but it's actually called Merge Models. And we have the same panes that we had previously, but they're a little bit different. Notice that the database is on the left and the model is now on the right. So basically what we did is we just flipped it. So now we can compare what the database looks like against what the model looks like. Once we expand the nodes, we can see that the contact table exists in the database, but it's not in the model. Also, the address is different. The database has the old definition of address, and if left still selected, it's going to replace my current definition. Here's a case where we don't want the changes to be applied to the model. You can just leave them in the database, so we're going to unselect that. And then lastly, the email column does not exist in the database, but it does exist in the model. The default behavior with deletions in PowerDesigner is to always leave it unchecked. We have to actually go in and check it to make sure that we want to delete something. Here we can see that we have successfully updated the model from the database without modifying any of our original edits. So now we have a picture of what the database looks like at its current state. And that concludes this PowerDesigner demonstration. Thanks for watching.